So welcome all. This is our Westfield Medical's first ever webinar. I hope that your connections are all okay. You can hear me clear and loud. You can see now the opening slide of the show on your screens. Today we are going to talk about Humipak, our unique and patented product for improving infection control and decontamination efficiency. We have people joining us today from almost all parts of the world, from Asia, Middle East, Americas, and obviously from Europe as well. My name is Jouni Vikman. I'm head of sales and marketing at Westfield Medical. I will be your host today. With me, we have two other speakers who I will introduce a little bit later. Our agenda today is as follows. I will first start with telling you what Humipak is, how it is used, and also what are the benefits on using Humipak. Jim Baldwin, our technical director, will then take us deeper onto Humipak design, innovative design, and functionalities, cracking the code for us, if you will. After Jim, we will have our dear guest speaker who will talk about implementation and usage of Humipak in one of the largest hospitals in Jordan, in Amman. Total duration for this webinar will be 1 hour. Let's start with a short video clip. Clearly, we have exceeded our targets if you all feel like Michael on the clip after this webinar, but I think we'll be happy even with something less. But anyway, we hope you enjoy the ride today. So what is Humipak? Basically, Humipak is a moisture retention pouch which is designed to inhibit hydrophobic proteins adhering to post-operative surgical instruments, and it is doing that by creating a moist environment. This idea has originated from a group of CSSD technicians already some years ago who were having difficulties cleaning instruments. This I'm sorry, I had my mobile phone on. I've been using an example of dishes myself quite often when I'm speaking about Humipak. We all know that if we are doing the dishes straight away after we've eaten, it's very easy to remove all food off from the plates. If we let them sit for the next day, we all know also how difficult it is to remove all the residuals. And the same goes with all the soil on the instruments as well. The other function Humipak has is the containment it creates for soil instruments, facilitating safe transportation from operating room to CSSD or SPD, as quite often called in the US especially. This second functionality is something that we weren't first thinking in the beginning, but more and more people are starting to use Humipak due to this effect. So why use Humipak? It has been proven in several studies, scientific studies early on, that drying of proteins is starting within 15 minutes already after the surgical procedure. If we let these hydrophobic proteins to dry on surfaces of the instruments, they become very difficult to be removed. Therefore, in many countries, there are instructions to keep instruments in moist conditions if the reprocessing won't start within 30 minutes from the procedure. Especially for these examples I have listed on this slide, Humipak is very applicable. If the operating theater is off-site, CSSD is not in the same facility as the operating theater, and then the transportation time from OR to the CSSD is greatly over 30 minutes. It is recommended to keep the instruments moist, and obviously Humipak does that. Also, especially in smaller hospitals, CSSD may not be operational over the weekends or during nighttime, and we call this out-of-hour operations. And therefore, and also operations may still be carried out during these hours. It is then advised to keep all post-surgical instruments in moist conditions. There are always some rush hours when the waiting times for instruments until they get reprocessed greatly exceed 30 minutes, and then again it's recommended to keep instruments in moist conditions. And in fact, any time when the delays are more than 30 minutes. How to use Humipak? In an OR, first you select the correct size of Humipak based on the tray you are going to be packing in, and you measure a specified amount of water. Typically, many people use syringe for this, as that's just so easy and convenient to use. But any other measurement class, for example, will do the job. Add water inside the Humipak onto the blue substrate, which is embedded between the films. This blue substrate is highly absorbent material, which will absorb 7 times of water of its own weight. And it also spreads around the water inside the Humipak without creating any pools of water. So it's all adhered onto the blue substrate. After adding water, you should place the instrument set inside the Humipak. After which you will close the Humipak by using the self-sealed tape, which is adhered on the pouch. And then the sealed Humipak tray inside is sent back to CSSD for reprocessing. In the CSSD, you will open the Humipak using scissors along the side or end, which is furthest away from the main body. And reprocessing of the instruments should follow as soon as possible. We have currently we have 5 different sizes of Humipak available. The smallest size, 200 × 350 millimeters, is designed for individual instruments and for smaller size trays. Then we have specific sizes for all commonly used tray sizes: half DIN, full DIN, and double DIN. The newest addition on the range is 560 x 670 millimeters, which is specifically designed for endoscopes, which are kept on plastic trays. So what are then the benefits of using Humipak? First of all, use of Humipak greatly reduces risk of infections, therefore leading to improved patient safety. When the soil of post-surgical instruments is easier to be cleaned, the risk of poorly decontaminated instruments ending back to OR is reduced. Thus, the risk of infections, cross-infections, is reduced as well. Use of Humipak reduces risks associated with transportation of soiled and sharp materials or instruments from the OR onto CSSD. In many countries today, it is either a mandatory requirement or at least a guidance or instruction to use moist returns of post-surgical instruments. For example, in the UK, there is a guidance called HTM 0101 for general instruments and 0106 for endoscopes, defining clearly the need of keeping post-surgical instruments in moist conditions before they get reprocessed. Humipak, the use of Humipak is quite easily validatable, and you can use that to show your compliance with applicable standards. There are benefits also for CSSD, as the soil is staying in a soft state and it is easy to be removed. That reduces the pre-cleaning time, or it may also make it completely unnecessary. Rinsing in cold water may just be enough. This is of course something that every CSSD needs to assess and validate themselves. Using of Humipak also reduces your workload, as now less brushing and scrubbing of soil is required. As the soil is removed easier when instruments have been kept in moist conditions, that reduces the rejected trays from packing area and OR, and thus of course also reducing the workload. And again, as less scrubbing and scrubbing is required, that reduces also the risk of damage for delicate instruments. As the instruments, they are kept in containment during the transportation from OR back to CSSD, that reduces the possibility of losing instruments as well. Finally, Humipak uses no chemical, whereas there are a lot of chemicals used for keeping instruments moist, like enzymatic, pre-treatment gels and sprays. With Humipak, you don't have any chemical-related health and safety concerns. Finally, there are also benefits for CSSD and hospital management. Some of them are a bit similar to the benefits already what we've gone through, however, looked at from a different angle. So this improved patient safety through the potential reduction in infections is of course also management concern and management target, and that's related to whole image management of the hospital. There is a potential, there is a cost-saving potential by using Humipak, as you can replace all pre-treatment chemicals you may be using today, and also you can greatly reduce the washing detergent or the amount of washing detergent what needs to be used, as you don't need to wash off any pre-treatment chemicals before placing the trays onto washer disinfectors. You will have longer lifespan of instruments, as less scrubbing is required, and as the soil is easier to be removed, that improves the operational efficiency. It actually increases the capacity in washroom up to 70%, according to our empirical studies we have carried out earlier. So one can increase the capacity in washroom without any capital expenditure. And finally, it improves the operational efficiency through reduced risk of cancelled or delayed operations, as the risk of poorly decontaminated instruments ending onto OR is reduced. This is all I wanted to tell you today. Now I will hand over to my dear colleague, Jim Baldwin, our technical director, who will take us deeper onto mechanics and physics of Humipak. Over to you, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Jouni. Okay, good morning, everyone. So I'm Jim, I'm Technical Director at Westfield Medical, and I'm going to run through some of the technical aspects of Humipak, some of which will be reiterating things that you've heard from Jouni, but with a more technical aspect to it. So we're going to look at the kind of the concept and design of Humipak, have a look at some third-party studies, a little bit of an insight into some user experience, and then just looking at sort of a recap of the benefits that Humipak can bring you. So Westfield Medical has a long history, over 50 years, in manufacturing of sterile barrier systems, and that's including the development of sterilisation pouches, barrier materials and sealing technology. We've been providing products into sterile services departments, mainly focusing on the output from those departments. But this enabled us to kind of transfer that knowledge into helping the inputs to sterile services. And Humipak was then developed into a product that makes the cleaning of instruments easier and more effective. Within the UK, there was a development of a set of guidelines, which became the HTM series that Jouni's already mentioned, which basically brought recommendations for used instruments to be kept in a moist environment prior to reprocessing. As you'll all be aware, the key point to this is that the decontamination process is much more effective when residues are not allowed to dry, which reduces the risk of transmissible infection from proteins and prions. Although this guidance was prompted by work looking at Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, there's also been some recent indications that there's the potential for transmission of other infectious diseases and even things like Alzheimer's disease through proteins in a similar mechanism to this. So still very much an important factor that needs to be considered when looking at reprocessing of used instruments. So looking at the design, we're using established medical grade materials, which materials that we're used to working with, but it also means that we don't get any compatibility issues with medical devices, surgical instruments. The film that's used is a a multi-layer laminate that's normally used for sterilisation pouches. So it's very strong, has a much lower water vapour transmission rate than something like a polyethylene bag, and the level is about 1/3. So this means that effectively it's impervious to water over the time scales that you would be using Humipak. The middle layer, which you can see in the pouch, is a highly absorbent material, but the significant part of this is actually the ability to spread the water rapidly by whipping through that material. This results in a high surface area of the water to facilitate the mobility of the water molecules from the liquid phase into vapour in the air inside the pack. And this in turn allows for a rapid increase in humidity inside the sealed pouch, which stops the residues and proteins from drying out. The recommended amount of water covers around about 1/4 to 1/3 of the surface area of the pouch, which means that there's further capacity for absorption for any wet residues that might be on the instruments. And that just means that anything that goes into the pouch actually will stay in the pouch, and when the pouch is opened, you don't get wet material running from the pouch. Drawing on the technology from our self-seal pouches, Humipak has a self-adhesive closure. So it's easy to seal, and it provides a continuous airtight seal that's very robust. You don't get any potential air leakage path with this, as you would have if you took a plastic bag and tied a knot in it or tied it with a cable tie. And if there's no potential for air leakage, then there's no potential for moisture leakage. So the moisture inside the pack stays inside the pack. The other key point is that the only thing that you need to make Humipak work is water. So a small amount of water, the volume of which is indicated on each side of the product, actually becomes a significant amount of water vapour. The water vapour comes into contact with every surface of the instruments in the pack, and will even penetrate into box joints and lumens, because you have no surface tension limitations as you do with any other kind of liquid media. There are no pre-treatment chemicals to buy. There's no need to make sure that every surface of every instrument is covered with sprays or gels, and there's no need to wash off any pre-treatments before you can really start to clean the instruments. So to illustrate the effectiveness of the moisture retention, we devised a test using a smaller amount of water than was specified for the pouches. We placed a humidity data logger inside the pouch, along with a polypropylene product to create an airspace in the bag, as there would be if there was a tray or instrument inside, but which itself doesn't contribute to the humidity levels. So we took 20 millilitres of water and added to each of the pouches, and the pouches were sealed and then stored for a week at room temperature. We also used a control sample with no water, because you will see some natural variation in humidity with temperature, so we put this in as a baseline for comparison. All of the sizes of Humipak reached humidity levels of over 90% within the first few hours. I remember this was with a lower volume of water, and they all retained humidity at over 96% for 7 days with no drop off. So this demonstrates the effectiveness of both the film and the sealing strip in preventing moisture loss. We also looked at how we could verify that it is the effect of the high surface area that gives this improved humidity within the pack. So we carried out a further study using a saturated sponge rather than just pouring water onto the absorbent layer. The sponge contained just over 20 millilitres of water to become saturated, so it was a comparable volume of water to the previous test. The graph shows the comparative results in the DIN size product, which is the 420 by 670 size of pouch. So the sample on the sponge takes longer for the humidity to build up. It never reaches the same peak as Humipak being used as intended, nor does it retain the humidity for as long. So from this, that we can deduce that a lot of the water in there is actually trapped within the structure of the sponge, and it's unable to make that transition into the air. So the same volume of water, same volume of air, and the same conditions, but something's preventing the humidity from reaching its maximum. And we'd expect this to be the same if you were using a wet towel or a dressing or something like this, which I think some people have tried. We also have some data from third-party studies, so external studies. There was a study carried out independently that was published in a journal of bioadhesion and biofilm research by a team at Southampton University. This was actually funded by the Department of Health. They looked at Humipak, a tied plastic bag, and also just leaving the samples in air. They used stainless steel tokens, contaminated and stored for 24 hours, and then they were cleaned and the residual contamination analysed. So they were looking at the effectiveness of the cleaning after these treatments. So Humipak, they stated maintained constant humidity, and after 24 hours, Humipak was the only product that maintained an environment which reduced the adsorption of proteins onto the surface of the samples. After 24 hours in Humipak, the protein levels after cleaning were comparable to those measured just after 15 minutes with the other methods, so the plastic bag or in air. And the report stated that Humipak demonstrates a cheap and easy to implement solution to improve reprocessing and potentially reduce associated infections. There are also some studies carried out in the US by our US partner, who've carried out 2 lots of studies to verify that Humipak does effectively keep the contamination moist. The first of these used a number of instruments, including some difficult to clean features, and stored these for up to 5 days, including control samples that weren't in Humipak. As you can see, the control samples all dried fairly rapidly, and the Humipak samples remained moist for 5 days. The second study that they carried out looked at cannulated devices, which they looked at for up to 3 days. The soils were enclosed in aluminum. These were slower to dry out in normal conditions than because of the aluminum, but when they do dry, they become far more difficult to remove. And again, Humipak demonstrated that it's enabled the soils to remain moist and therefore easy to clean. So, although the primary purpose of Humipak, as it was designed, is a mechanism for infection control through improved decontamination, we can't ignore the costs associated with using the product. So we carried out a study in conjunction with a UK sterile services department where Humipak is frequently used for caesarean section sets. Their feeling was that the use of Humipak saved them time when it was used for these heavily soiled sets. So we looked to verify this by carrying out some back-to-back studies with and without Humipak. So with Humipak, the sets were taking 3 minutes to clean manually. If they didn't use Humipak, then they were taking 14.5 minutes. So I'm sure you'll agree this is a significant difference. National data from England and Wales for 2019 indicates there were an average of just over 53,000 births per month throughout the year, and NHS data shows that on average around 29% of these were C-section deliveries. So when you calculate that, even if you take a slightly more conservative time saving of 10 minutes per set, that gives a potential time saved of 2,500 hours per month. The impact on sterile services departments in terms of flexibility of staffing, capacity, allowing redeployment to other tasks rather than spending hours scrubbing instrument sets, and potentially savings on overtime or cover to deal with these things. So there are some potentially large benefits there. In addition to the cleaning of instruments, another key benefit, as Jouni mentioned earlier, is containment and the ability of Humipak to isolate any potential biohazard material within a sealed environment. This means that any contamination that is on the instruments inside the pack stays inside the pack. There's no risk of spreading or dispersing infectious materials during movement of those used instruments, whether that's within the hospital itself or between units, in vehicles, and through many different pairs of hands. So, considering the potential infectious materials, one question that's been raised a number of times regarding Humipak is that of bacterial growth. And an enclosed humid environment is clearly conducive to bacterial growth, but we wanted to understand what that actually means. So we commissioned a study at a UK test house looking at a number of instruments that were contaminated with 4 species of organism, 3 bacteria and a fungal pathogen. Humipak was prepared as recommended and stored at room temperature, and we tested 4 sizes of that. So what did it show us? Well, the findings are quite inconclusive. There's no clear pattern across any of the test species or Humipak sizes. In some cases, there's evidence of a delayed growth, and others there's evidence of some growth followed by decay, but overall it's very unclear. Now, if it's unclear under laboratory conditions, then it's almost impossible to predict what you're going to get in practice because there are so many other factors involved. And you're looking at the environmental factors, the temperature, the contents of the pack. To grow the bacteria needs a food source. That's going to vary between instrument sets, procedure types, patients, and also the initial level of bacteria and type. And the other thing that is worth noting is that where you have sprays and gels that are designed to keep the residues moist, they don't kill the bacteria either. They don't stop that mechanism either. And even enzymatic sprays, they will start to break down the proteins, but they don't do anything for the bacteria. But regarding Humipak, we accept that this is there is a risk associated. So looking at the implications that this has for the handling of Humipak. Yes, there is potential bacterial growth, but it's contained, as we've already discussed. And on a risk basis, it's better to ensure containment than potentially disperse bacteria throughout the transit route. The pack is only opened within the controlled environment of the decontamination area. But there are some key points to consider when using Humipak. We would always recommend that the contents are reprocessed as soon as possible, whether that is within a matter of hours or over a weekend. Obviously that depends on the individual units. We also suggest an appropriate level of PPE for the person that's opening the pack, and that may include masks, face shields, goggles, gloves, but that should be based on a risk assessment within the the individual unit and their processes and their procedures. We recommend that the pack is cut open and suggest doing that away from the body. And that's just to avoid any possible plume of airborne bacteria where opening. Overall, it's about a risk balance. Yes, there is a potential exposure to the individual opening the pack, but that is a trained individual and has the appropriate PPE. And it's balancing that against the wider risk of potential exposure to a wider area, a wider number of people, and less effective decontamination and the associated infection risk with that less effective cleaning. So just to review and reflect on some of these points, the primary function is to prevent drying of proteins and prions, makes them easier to clean. And this is a compliance issue and also an infection control issue. The specific design of Humipak creates a fast humidity rise, So it starts working more quickly than some other methods. The level of absorbency means that any fluids that are on the instruments are retained in the pack, but also allows the water molecules to move easily between liquid and vapor phases. And it's easy to use, using water, not chemicals, avoiding any potential contamination, compatibility issues with some instruments, or potentially some fixative effects with some disinfectants. And it has an easy and effective seal to form. We have the biohazard containment within a sealed pack, no risk of dispersion. Opening in a controlled environment, so minimal exposure to those risks. And then we have potential time saving. That's obviously dependent on the individual unit, but offers some flexibility for the unit in how they're using their people, how they're using their time. So this concludes my presentation. I'm now going to hand you back to Jouni to introduce our guest speaker. So thank you for watching and listening.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks a lot for the very deep knowledge about Humipak and its mechanics and physics. Yes, now it's over to our dear guest speaker, Mr. Tariq Maali from Maather Pharma. He is our distributor in Jordan, and he will now talk us through about an implementation of Humipak in one of the largest hospitals in Jordan Hospital. Over to you, Tariq.
Okay, thank you, Jouni, for introducing me to this presentation. It is actually a great honor and pleasure to be a guest speaker alongside with our partners from Westfield, talking about wonderful product just like Humipak. So to introduce myself again, my name is Tariq Maali. I'm the co-founder and the business development manager of Maather drugstore in Amman, Jordan. And my case presentation will be actually about one of our biggest and largest and leader hospitals in Jordan. On the top right, that you can see my photo there. So if you meet me in the future, we will have the chance to chat and exchange our experience together. And you can notice also that I'm very happy in that photo, taking a photo actually with the Humipak, which is our celebrity here. And the other thing that made me happy with that photo is that during this real training session in one of our biggest hospitals in Jordan, I can read the minds and know the degree of satisfaction that my trainee were able to have after evaluating Humipak. So again, to introduce Jordan Hospital to all of you. Actually, Jordan Hospital is a medical center in Amman, Jordan, that was established back into 1993 with 300 beds, multi-specialty capacity, well-equipped hospital, and considers again one of the largest and the leader in the healthcare in Jordan, and a referral hospital in the region. And as a summary of what we are going to have during this presentation, we are going to discuss the challenges, opportunities, and how we succeeded both together. When I say we, I mean not only Maather, it is about Maather, about Westfield, and about our people in Jordan Hospital to change the way Jordan Hospital handle post-operative surgical instrument through utilizing Humipak. Before we go through these challenges and the opportunities that we have there, we need to talk about the current post-operative instruments handling procedure that we found there inside hospital. And it's not only inside Jordan Hospital, actually the whole market are moving through these points actually, which are in Jordan in general. Our people used to soak the instrument after they use, or they sometimes do the washing pre-washing directly after the procedures, but specifically in Jordan Hospital, there were no treatment of procedures, and there were two scheduled, actually twice scheduled transportation of instruments from OR or obstetric units and other surgical departments to CSSD, and for the night shifts, and they used to accumulate all the trays and sending them at the early morning at the beginning of the day shift. And in some cases, we noticed that in specific departments such as the obstetric units, due to a heavy blood trays, they were actually pushed to use the pre-cleaning enzymes for selected procedures. So, what were the challenges that we face with Jordan Hospital actually? After discussion, a long discussion with the infection control people regarding introducing the Humipak there, they were claiming that the standard operation procedures that they already have and needs a long-term process to be modified again, and it needs a lot of testimony, a lot of chains of decision to be approved. And the other people from OR, they were claiming that the resistance of their nurses is a current behavior there. So if you introduce any new product there, they would resist to use it. From the point of view of purchasing and procurement department, the cost was the big issue for them to add to the capital cost of buying a new product. And again, as I mentioned before, there were some kind of competitor inside there, the detergent by enzymatic products. And my key, actually our key challenge is to reach for all the influencer people and decision maker to help us switching the hospital toward using Humipak. So from all these challenges, we have actually a very good opportunities to start working for. So again, in Jordan, most of our hospitals are accredited either by local accreditation companies or by international ones such as HCAC or JCI, and every 3 years they need to renew their certification. There was actually some comments about Jordan Hospital regarding the transportation of surgical instruments and how they deal with the surgical instruments, and they need to actually to have correction plans and the correction guidelines for how to deal with, how to handle the surgical instruments post-operatively. So that was one of the points that we work on with Jordan Hospital, and we discuss a lot about how Humipak actually is a validated product that could easily correct all these defects inside the hospital. Again, there were we as and it's just as a hospital that they have the OR inside the second floor, the obstetric units inside the fourth floor, and CSSD in the first, actually in the basement floor. There was a defect of transportation of surgical instruments, and where the CSSD capacity compared to the number of operation from different departments is actually low, and the setup of OR and obstetric units and other surgical departments are not well designed to run a pre-cleaning procedure. What was from all these opportunities our strategies and plans? Actually, we work actually we tried to reach all the key persons who are involved with the decision cycle, and we can call them our target audience. That includes actually, but not limited to, the infection control people, quality managers, OR people, obstetric people, and CSSD and procurement managers. And sometimes in Jordan Hospital, we have a couple of meetings with the CEO of the hospital. And with meeting all these people, we needed to customize Humipak benefits. As we know, there's a wide range of benefits and values that Humipak can give us. So we need to customize the Humipak benefits to meet the specific needs per each target audience. And again, it's not a one-to-one decision, so we needed to coordinate between all parties to make a Humipak as a common interest for all these departments, and also outweigh the impact of a Humipak use on total cost in terms of direct and indirect cost. We work with this actually with the procurement and purchasing departments. And all these things actually have been done through conducting audiovisual activities, lectures, roundtable meetings, and for sure on-site training for the staff, and follow up with them on a regular basis. And we gone through the product evaluation. After having the product actually evaluated and approved by the committee, the decision was taken actually to buy Humipak and to run a trial period and see how things will go. So to summarize the values and the benefits that the people has actually with using Humipak, I have quoted some statements that our customer says about Humipak, and these actually can summarize all the values that every department get after using Humipak. For example, Lana Fawzi, the infection control manager, said, Humipak provide us with a perfect, easy tool to pass JCI inspection. I never thought that this pouch has all magic inside. As an OR manager, I have a lot of responsibilities that include safe transportation of surgical instruments to CSSD, maintaining my instrument fit and ready for any schedule or urgent procedure. After using Humipak and train staff how to use it, we notice lower rates of missing instruments or broken ones, and transportation look safer with a Humipak. This is by actually Muhammad Samour, the OR manager. Other people from CS and obstetric units say that, as you know, that labor and CS department have the heaviest blood on instruments. Dryness of this blood was a big concern for us, and using pre-cleaning enzymes was too much risky for the mothers and babies, and for sure my staff. Humipak is the only product in the market helped me to overcome all these issues, said Sister Rasha Ahmed, the CS manager. And from the CSSD point of view, Mr. Nauras has a statement that he said, our nightmare at CSSD department is to get blamed about the procedure delays or cancellation. Humipak truly helped us to reduce pre-cleaning time, workload, and it improves our capacity. And finally, from the management and the procurement point of view, according to our hospital guidelines, I need to choose appropriate pre-cleaning product that does not increase our running cost. I feel Humipak can support my decision. This is by Dr. Muhammad Al-Haj, the purchasing and the procurement manager. Finally, I'd like to show actually this photo before I say thank you. This is me and Jouni during our launching program in Jordan. And in the middle is the OR manager of one of our hospitals here in Jordan. And my key message here is that Humipak is a product that involves all of us, either as a supplier or distributor or a customer or healthcare worker, to deliver the best quality products to ensure assure our patient safeties and staff safety in hospital. And by using Humipak, we are all winners. Thank you for listening, and happy to answer any question if you have. You can send to Jouni. Jouni.
We have now some time for questions, and it looks like we have received some very good ones here. If we won't have enough time to go them through all, we will of course send them all by email over to you, dear attendees, and also our responses. You will still have some time on posting these questions on the chat room, so feel free to do so. Of course, also afterwards, you can always be sending us any questions you may have. Let's start with this one. Someone is asking us, did you test Humipak with chemicals? Maybe the benefits would be more if in the Humipak can disinfect the instruments. So if I understand correctly, what the person is asking is that would they be using both pre-treatment chemicals and also Humipak? And answer is yes. We have actually a statement to show that, and also we have customers doing it. What we keep telling our customers is that you don't necessarily need to do that. You can replace all these chemicals by using Humipak and this way save costs. But if you want to have like a double security, yes, of course, you can do that. Is there anything, Jim and or Tariq, you want to add on this one?
Yeah, I'd say that it's something that we considered and have revisited a number of times in terms of recommendations for use of chemicals with Humipak. The things that we've looked at is exactly what type of chemical would we use. We looked at the option of disinfectants, but we know that there's a potential risk with some disinfectants causing a fixative effect with proteins onto the surface of instruments, and we don't want to go down that route. It would negate the benefits of using Humipak. And there's also the issue of the number of products on the market. How do we we wouldn't go through a process of validating every possible material that's available. But if individual users feel that there's a benefit to them and they have a particular product that they use, then that can work for them. From our point of view, we see the use of the water as being effective, and really don't see the need to add other products in there.
Thank you, Jim. Anything you want to add, Tariq, or that's?
My comment here is actually I was facing such a question inside the market, but if I get the correct answer, do they mean that to use some products inside a Humipak, chemical products inside a Humipak, so I can preserve the humidity alongside killing the all microorganisms? And my answer was actually to them is by keeping the blood moist and washing them, wearing the PPEs is more than enough if you practice it in this way.
Thank you very much. The next question we have here is actually to you, Tariq. Someone is asking, did you have any reduction on your rewashes? And if so, what percentage? Thank you.
Yeah, we have actually, the hospital actually were running this kind of reduction, and it varies actually depending on the time the instrument were placed inside the pouches. Actually, some of them were actually a little bit dried, some was too much more moisty, and Some other hospitals, they were placing actually the instruments after they get dried. So in average, the percentage was actually between 50 and 70%, decreasing the working load and the washing time. We have studied this in Jordan University Hospital. They placed a CS set inside a Humipak on Thursday and open it on next Sunday, and the usual time for was washing CS trays between 20 and 25 minutes. It was decreased to actually 6 to 10 minutes with washing time. So it's between 50 and 17% actually.
Thank you very much, Tariq. Still a couple of minutes to go, and you have time to be sending sending questions. Please keep them coming. The next question I could pick up here is, within your studies, in-house or third party, have you had any issues reported in terms of the condition of the instruments, for example, rust, due to A, incorrect amount of water, or B, leaving instruments longer in the pack? Would you, Jim, like to take this one?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. So yes, I would say certainly in the past, sort of the early days of people using Humipak, we received some reports of rusting of instruments. In terms of the A or B, I'm not aware of any issues with leaving the instruments longer in the pack, but certainly we have seen issues relating to the incorrect amount of water being used. We had a case where this was being reported. We went and investigated to see what was happening, and there were two main mechanisms really. One of which was that some of the instruments that were being used actually had some pre-existing damage, where the chrome surface was damaged, and there was some spotting of rust in those areas. But that was only occurring where it was in conjunction with an excessive amount of water being used. So rather than measuring out the required amount of water, putting that into the pouch and then putting the instrument set in, I think in a worst case, there was an instant where they actually just held the Humipak under a tap and put far too much water in, which meant there was pooling of water. There were instruments sitting within those pools of water. That is when you'll see those issues. The other thing that we have seen, which there's some question whether it may cause rusting, is if the order of loading is done wrong. So if you put the instrument set in and then throw the water in on top of it, you've got water in contact with the instruments again, which we wouldn't recommend. So the process of putting the water in, the water wicks and spreads across the surface of the absorbent material, the tray set then goes in, you're minimising the contact between the instruments and the liquid water. The mechanism can then work properly, whereby the water becomes water vapour, and that is what gives you the benefit in the product.
Thank you, Jim. Any short comment from you, Tariq, before we close off?
Actually, I have a couple of comments regarding this issue. And there's a key message for our people, for the distributor actually, and for the OR manager or CSSD manager who are following us. Actually, during my training and evaluating of products, some of my customers, and if it is allowed, I was not allowed to share a photo of one of the people who is transporting Humipak with 300 ml of water instead of 30 ml of water. That was an issue regarding the rusting and broken of instruments. And the other one, some of my customers were adding the water inside the tray itself, not on the inside the pack, on the absorbent material, and they were claiming that we did not have humidity and the blood rise over the instrument. So training and holding a training session actually on the appropriateness of using a Humipak and how to use a Humipak will assure you the to get the results that you are looking for.
Thank you, Tariq. Thanks a lot for this response. And we've used our time now. I'd like to thank you both, Tariq and Jim, for the presentations and discussions. And also I'd like to thank you hugely, all attendees, for this webinar. Remember, we have the second Humipak webinar this week, Thursday at 2 p.m. UK time. That is GMT +1. You can check from Google what that means for your own time zone. And we'd like to see you there. And we will have a different guest speaker, this time a guy, an OR, oh, sorry, not OR, CSSD manager from Holland. See you, hopefully all, on Thursday. Keep sending your questions and wish you a nice day. Thank you very much for all.